Hello, I'm Bruce Zimmerman, and this is the Open Line Garden Show podcast for this week.
Now, let's just wrap up the begonias for the leafy ones for the garden. Now, remember that these are great in containers. They prefer the shade, which means you get a lot of color in a shady or semi-shady area. I used to put these on the patio underneath the tree, and they just did fantastic. They would fill the pot, and it would be a 10 or a 12-inch pot. So you couldn't put anything else in the pot. It was so big and tight, and it sort of overpowered them. So the leafy begonias that we talk about, you should be aware of that. Now, many of them are cold tolerant once they're established. They're only hardy to zone 7, so you're not going to keep these outdoors for any extended period of time in the fall. You want to bring them in, probably grow them in a sunny, cool location. They have sort of a metallic palmate leaves, and these garden angel begonias, because that's what they call them, are a series with a very upright habit, the metallic palmate leaves, and they're going to be slightly different sizes. But on average, 24 to 30 inches is what you're going to get, and usually about 18 inches across. They can be very large, very leafy. They do get flowers, but you don't really grow them for their flowers, to be honest with you. You grow them for their colored stems, their colored leaves, and trust me, they are gorgeous, and they certainly do brighten up the shade in your garden. There are 3 of them in the Garden Angel series, because there are many, many others like this. We just don't see as many as we should. The first one is a Garden Angel Plum. And think of a palmate leaf, like a maple leaf, with the dark veins. The plum is in the center and on the stems and on the reverse of the leaves. The interveins are a silvery white and very, very large. So, excellent plant for a container. Then there's Garden Angel Silver, and this one is very aggressive. It's large. It can be used as a houseplant. And the Garden Angel Silver has the palmate leaf with the dark green veins and the silvery metallic white markings all over the leaf. Very large, very aggressive, very pretty. The prettiest of all of them, in my opinion, is Garden Angel Blush. Now, Garden Angel Blush is going to be an interesting plant in the fact that the new growth has got this pink blush. So, it's got the palmate leaves, it's got the green veins, the silver white interveins, but the silver white interveins on the new growth are pink. The stems are pink. Now, as the new growth matures, it changes back down to the silvery white and green veins. So you've got both colors on the same plant, and it's going to be 24 by 30 inches. It's a very, very good big one. And it does have nice pink flowers. This one probably is, along with the Angel Silver, the best for the flowers if you want the few flowers that they actually do produce. Grow the foliage, and like most of the big garden begonias, they are growing for their leaves, not their flowers. Coleus. Let's talk about Coleus. When I was a boy, you pinched Coleus continually, even throughout the winter, if it was in a sunny window, which is where I grew mine, in my bedroom. So I'd have a whole array of different combinations of color of begonia sitting at the bedroom window. Now, I always took cuttings and started out with small plants because of space. And as it, got towards spring, I would always have a collection of fairly large Coleus. Now, to maintain size, you pinch them, right? Well, the new ones are being bred that they don't require pinching, and they don't need any growth regulators either. So no plant growth regulators to regulate the growth and keep it down in size, and no pinching. This really cuts down on the labor in the greenhouse, but it also means that you've got this compact plant for your pots and for your garden. They are selected. They have very tight internodes. That means the leaves are close together. They're self-branching. You don't need any chemicals to keep them sort of like that. And you just don't have to even pinch. So it's what's known as the lazy man's Coleus. You don't even have to pinch it. I don't know. That could be fun. But here's a few of them that you can actually get for this, where you've got this type of breeding going on. The flying carpet thriller Coleus is typical of the older ones, where it's got that red center and yellow on the outside, except that the yellow border is very, very even, and the edge of the leaf is a rounded, serrated leaf. So it's interesting, it's colorful, and of course has all these other features. There's hipster jasper. How do you describe this guy? Very unusual. It's predominantly in the dark rosy red pink leaves. The leaves are very serrated. The edges have a little bit of yellow on them, particularly towards the tip of each of the serrations. And the tips are rounded. So it's an unusual looking Coleus. Give interest. And because it's got such a serrated type elongated leaf, gives a slightly lighter texture to the Coleus that you're used to. And then there's Tidbits Tammy. Now, personally I think this one's ugly. But it's interesting in the fact that think of it as being very small-leafed, slightly irregular in its pattern of growth, and the center is still that deep red maroon with the golden edge, except that the leaves are very small, very fine, stems are green, and just a sort of irregular-looking shape to it. So I don't know, if I had this one in my garden, I'd probably end up pinching it, even though it's one of those that you don't have to. And then there's the Terra Nova Marrakesh. Now this one's interesting in the fact that it's a darker red, and being a darker red, you've got a little bit of gold on the edge, mainly towards the tip, a little bit of gold flecking. And it's very, very colorful. It's going to stand out in your garden. It's going to irradiate. People are going to look at it and go, ooh, that's cool. Is that alternantha? No, that's a Coleus. So, an interesting one. And that is Marrakesh. So, take a look at that one. Now, there are dwarf Coleuses. Now, most people don't even know this. They've been bred for their dwarf habit. They're used for fairy gardens, for those of you who are doing container fairy gardens. And they have very small leaves. They're self-branching. They're basically 9 to 12 inches when they're mature. They go into the sun. They go into shade. They go into semi-sun, which makes them very useful. You're looking at 9 to 12 inches, basically. You know it's not hardy, but there are some interesting features to it. So, lovebird is probably one of the prettiest. Think of a rounded leafed, elongated leaf. Each segment on the edge of the leaf is rounded in gold, and the center is a really nice dark red and dwarf. It's called lovebird. The other one that is spectacular is macaw. Think of this exactly the same thing with a longer, more elongated leaf, more red on the outside of the leaf. This is the reverse to lovebird. And so it's got all the same unusual shapes and rounded edges and etc. But the center is your yellow, white, gold, and the red is all a nice deep red on the outside edge. Then the new scarlet ibis, sort of the same thing. The unusual leaf, the rounded, serrated edges, which are green. Center is a pink, a rosy red, pink, okay, and a nice plant. So you've got those ones, and then there's Persia. Now, Persia is a little more irregular in its pattern of color in the leaves. Some leaves look like lovebird. Some leaves look like they've barely got any red on them at all, and usually just the main vein down the center with a few freckles in red, and the rest are all the golden yellow. Sort of a interesting combination. It's called Persia. You might want to look for that one as well. Now, there is also in Coleus what's known as the Fancy Feathers collection. Now, think of these as being long, very narrow, elongated leaves that may twist, may not twist, and are, of course, bicolored. So, is it unusual? Yes. Probably the copper is the most interesting color, in the fact that its copper leaves have come out copper and have a bit more red in them as they mature. So you get this elongated, like 3, 4, 5 inch long leaves that are very long, very narrow. And then there's the Fancy Feathers pink. Now, I don't know why it's called pink. Unless, of course, the red is a little more pink than red. But think of the same thing. Elongated, 3 to 5 inch leaves. Yellow, red, and older growth has green on it. So you have this long, elongated leaves in the colors, and it's really cute. So try that. Those are really unusual. There is a black. Now the black is very, very dark edged. It's still the elongated leaf, but it's got splashes of rosy red through the leaves, which makes it interesting. It's not quite as bright and colorful, but an excellent plant for contrast to others that are. Okay, so try that as well. There are some other Coleus called tidbits. Now, these are very small. They're deeply lobed, semi-dwarf habit, self-branching, 24 to 10 inches, sun, shade, and semi-shade. And they have that unusual shape that I described as being rounded, lobed edges, with Timmy being the red with the yellow on the outside, and then Terry being very similar but much more regular in its pattern of yellow and red in the same place on the leaf. In other words, the edges are yellow and the actual center of the leaf is a rosy red. And then Tammy. Now Tammy reminds me of the older varieties with the red center and light greeny yellow edges. But the whole leaf is sort of rounded and got a smooth edge on it, which is unusual. Very good plants to try in the garden and to give you something interesting in containers as well.
I'm Bruce Zimmerman. This is the Open Line Garden Show podcast for this week.